You want good news? You came to the right place. It's Wednesday. That's great. Halfway through the week. Todd's here. That's great. Kyle's here. That's great. The Toronto Blue Jays signed a pitcher that went 17-1 last year and was the MVP. That's great. Sure, it happened in Korea, but the Jays landed Cody Ponce. Todd.
Look, Toolsy, I mean, just when you thought the Jays staff couldn't get any better, after ponying up to $200+ million for Dylan Cease, they go out there and they land Cody Ponce. I don't think you're going to find him listed at Bet Rivers to win the Cy Young in any capacity, but hey, miracles happen every day. And if you'd have told me that Trey Yasevich was the guy to hold the staff together a season ago, maybe Cody Ponce can be that linchpin for 2026 and beyond with that multi-year deal.
But at $10 million a year AAV, it's worth taking a flyer on a guy like this. He's got good stuff. He put up some good numbers. Why not, right?
I mean, look, you have to take some flyers on some of these guys for sure. You're not going to get everyone that has ace quality at the major league level. And if the Jays believe in their coaching staff, along with their pitching instruction, this is a guy from a pedigree standpoint they believe can take the next step. It feels like an eternity, though, since he was drafted into Major League Baseball. But hey, look, some prospects don't exactly mature overnight. So look, I think it's a low risk, high reward potential option if he's even able to achieve half of that kind of win total and or ERA number that he did last year in Korea.
Your guys' version of taking a flyer much different than mine, because if I see an item on Temu for $15 and I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be legit, then that's taking a flyer at $15 on a Temu item.
Look, Dan, the way I see it, it's not your money that the Jays are spending on these prospects.
You're right, Todd. See, good news.
That's the way you have to try and approach it. If someone else wants to spend frivolously or take those flyers, doesn't matter how many commas are in that equation. For you, $1.50 may be out of your comfort zone, but for the Blue Jays, apparently $10 million is right in their wheelhouse.
You might remember, I think it was like 10 years ago, the Blue Jays, they went into the season, they signed like 8 pitchers for $1 million each. And it was like just throwing them all. One or two of them is going to work out, and not a single one of them worked out. So they have a different approach this time.
That's kind of my philosophy. I mean, look, credit the Atlanta Braves for doing this. You know, they gave franchise-friendly deals to prospects that they thought were going to be stars. Are all of them going to pan out? Absolutely not. But if you hit one or two of them, it puts you in a good spot. And it goes back to the way that I think NFL teams should approach the first round of the draft, or multiple rounds, I guess. If you don't have a franchise quarterback, you should be drafting a quarterback every single season, not necessarily in the first round, but take a flyer on a guy in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Hope you can catch lightning in a bottle, because as we know, if you don't have the best position in the sport, or most important, I should say, nailed down, what good does it do you in terms of your Super Bowl prospects?
And I mean, even with football, broader picture, now that Dan has informed us that you can get these players off of Temu, or whatever he was implying with that statement, it's not a bad deal. You just kind of spray and pray. Todd, I have a broader picture sports betting question for you about baseball preseason bets. The Toronto Blue Jays have been making moves. They exceeded expectations in the this past season, and they've had a lot of the headlines on them this offseason. There's not going to be a lot of value on them in a preseason bet. So would it be worth it to wait and see if they start slow and grab them then?
I would agree. I don't think there's any reason to try and buy Blue Jays futures now at a price tag right around 15-1 at Bet Rivers. I mean, that's a number that could easily drift out into the 20-1 range, maybe even a shade higher. And a worst case scenario, if they come out of the gates white hot, there's nothing that says taking 12-1 if you know the product on the field is going to be better than what we saw last year. So I would echo those exact same sentiments. I don't think you're stealing by betting this team months before the season starts, or even in March or early April. You want to look much further down the board and identify a team or two that may be able to come from off the pace, or in the case of the Jays, like we saw last year, start relatively slowly. And guys, I talked to a number of professional bettors that, you know, at the end of April and early May, were betting the Blue Jays to miss the playoffs and felt comfortable laying price tags north of $2. So it just puts things in perspective for Major League Baseball, very similar to the NHL in that capacity, that you don't necessarily know who the best teams are going to be from that second tier of teams going into the season, the same way you typically do in the NBA, where it doesn't shock anybody that the Oklahoma City Thunder are the overwhelming favorites and are destined to potentially break the regular season wins record of the Golden State Warriors with how they're performing so far.
Remember off the top, I said this was nothing but good news. I've got more for you. Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Florida Panthers 4-1. That means the Leafs have now won 3 of 4, and the Florida Panthers are last in the Eastern Conference. They're last.
Look, I mean, are you going to ask me which team I'm buying stock in when it comes to March and April?
I'm just pointing out good news.
All right, well, that is good news. Unfortunately for Leafs fans, you don't win the Stanley Cup or even qualify for the playoffs before you get to Christmas time. So let's temper the expectations a bit. But they were the better side last night, cashing at a robust price tag right around plus $1.40, upwards of plus $1.45. But this is a Florida Panthers team we knew was going to go through the regular season slog. It was just keeping their heads above water, relatively speaking, hoping that they were going to get reinforcements back, most notably Matthew Tkachuk when he returns from that groin surgery. We know Sasha Barkov, a long shot to return at all this season, but they played without Eetu Luostarinen, and they played last night without Carter Verhaeghe. I think the Panthers are going to be fine, but I understand why Leafs fans are grasping for straws now, Toolsy, hoping that they've finally been able to turn the season around. You look at their upcoming schedule, game against Carolina tomorrow, home games against Montreal, Tampa, and San Jose. Win 3 out of the next 4, and suddenly the playoff picture within the muddled mess that is the Atlantic does look a little bit better.
Just want to make sure the viewers at home realize those opinions just came from a guy whose Ottawa Senators shirt is currently cropped out of it to some degree. So grain of salt, people.
Kyle, some way, some shape or form, I have to be able to represent the best NHL franchise going right now in the province of Ontario. So,
Well, that's disparaging to say the least. But the Leafs have now shown they've shown some of their strength that was predicted in the offseason. Down the middle, they're pretty good. And between the pipes, even though they only have one of the dynamic duo playing well or playing at all right now, things do seem to be changing a little bit. I realize it needs more time.
They're getting saves. I think that's the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. Early in the year when Joseph Woll was away for personal reasons, they just weren't getting the kind of production in net that they expected from Anthony Stolarz. And of course, that doesn't all fall entirely on his shoulders. I mean, the Leafs were dreadful when it came to defending zone entries and high danger chances coming from within the slot. But as you get healthier in that forward group, guys are figuring out their roles, their identity, so to speak. It's created a little bit of an offensive outburst, especially in the last couple of games. But I do think it's troubling that you didn't get good news about Brandon Carlo on the blue line. You know, when he's going to be able to return, suffered a setback in his rehab. You know, we have no timeline for Chris Tanev. And given the way that we have seen this Eastern Conference look to be more congested than ever before, you know, you lose 3 games in a row or you don't get the loser's point. Suddenly you go from being right in the middle of things to the outside looking in. And we've seen that a little bit with the Buffalo Sabres, who are playing better with the return of Josh Norris to their roster. I mean, the Canadiens lose a game last night, get run out of their building by the Ottawa Senators. They fall out of the playoff picture. So every single point, even before we get to, you know, game 30, game 35, takes on a bigger meaning than what we've seen in the past, where typically by American Thanksgiving, we have a pretty good idea of the 8 teams that are going to make the playoffs on both the Eastern and Western Conference sides.
The Edmonton Oilers got introduced to the Jesper Wallstedt era. He recorded his 4th shutout of the season. Wild beat the Oilers 1-0. His 4th shutout of the season.
Tremendous nickname, Toolsy, and I'm disappointed that you didn't copyright the IP behind it. They're calling him now, not my nickname, the Great Wall of St. Paul. And given the numbers that he's put forth during the month of November, he's been phenomenal. He's really stabilized what the Wild want to do. That's been a roster absolutely ravaged with injuries as well, but they've been able to persevere. And I'll pose the question to you guys, the way that Wallstedt is playing, I mean, is there a legitimate case, and a lot of runway still to go, that he could have the inside track to win the Vezina Trophy this year, but still not win the Calder because of what Matthew Schaefer is doing with the New York Islanders?
Here's my question. Have we had a professional athlete named Jesper since Jesper Parnevik?
I think, you know, we've had a Jesper Fast in the NHL recently that hasn't exactly performed the way we want. I'm not sure exactly how we need to pronounce the prolific forward for the Devils. Is it Jesper or is it Jesper Bratt? So we can kind of go that route. So, you know, maybe it's a name that's growing in popularity in the Scandinavian countries, and they're staging an NHL takeover before our very eyes.
We've brought this up multiple times on the show before, but it's worth repeating. The lack of French-Canadian goaltending Is Sweden the new Quebec?
Sure looks to be that way. I mean, the Henrik Lundqvist lineage, so to speak. Although one Swedish netminder that hasn't exactly performed to a high level, Jakob Markstrom, if we're continuing along that trend, basically getting supplanted, at least for me, by what we've seen from Jake Allen thus far. But there appears to no doubt be a little bit of a Swedish pipeline there in terms of goaltending and almost a European takeover of sorts. When you look at how Russians have kind of been able to commandeer the position. You got a great battle last night between Andrei Vasilevsky and Ilya Sorokin. But guys, are we seeing a changing of the guard for Team Canada as well, assuming that we're actually going to have Olympic hockey, given that fiasco overseas in Italy right now? That will Logan Thompson be the starter in game one instead of the mercurial Jordan Binnington, who backboned the team to the Four Nations a season ago?
Wait, what's the fiasco in Italy?
Oh, Kyle, you want to fill him in on this? You want to fill him in on this? These are the kind of things that I would expect if Toolsy ran a construction company.
Dan, the high proficiency Italian construction company working over there, I believe they just laid the foundation for the arena last week. They are so far behind schedule. They're going to be playing the hockey in France.
Yeah, and the other thing, apparently measuring the proper length of the NHL sheet has been problematic as well. So we're going back to the old school Boston Garden here. 5 feet shorter. We're going to get a little bit more physicality. I'm sure that's not going to benefit, the teams that are more physical and more skilled in Team USA and Team Canada. But I have a feeling, like you said, Kyle, we're playing in France or we're heading 4 or 5 hours north to play in Switzerland, because this rink ain't going to be done in Milan Cortina unless we're playing outside with a little 3-wall shanty style, like a lot of us grew up playing on, both in, where I grew up in Chicago and you guys in and around Ontario.
Well, this is amazing. This is where I come to get my news, from you guys.
That's what we're doing. We're trying to make you smarter little by little.
Before we go, we got to touch upon the Thursday nighter. Oh, it's a lot of points. Cowboys and Lions, 54.5 for that one.
This is the kind of thing I know you dream of, a standalone primetime National Football League game with two teams vying to try and get their seat at the table for the playoff, with the expectation of offense, and more offense on full display. And this number, guys, actually opened a shade lower in that 51.5, 52 range. We're now headed towards another key number of 55 that we don't see often in the NFL. And for me, it's a little bit surprising because we're still not sure if the Lions are going to have the services of their most talented wide receiver and Amon-Ra St. Brown. We know they're banged up at the tight end position. Sam Laporta lost for the season. Brock Wright going to miss the game. But this Cowboys offense is absolutely humming right now. Detroit can't seem to get stops. They have question marks in their defensive backfield. And you have to imagine that CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens are poised for a big day. But Toolsy, just to temper your expectations here, we got a total of 54.5. And we also have a total, if we get a little weather, trending towards a preseason like 33. I know you're going to be locked in to see two rookies doing battle in Cleveland with Shedeur Sanders on one side and Cam Ward on the other come Sunday.
Todd, one more question from me, at least, about tomorrow night's game. Matthew Stafford going into this game, he's plus 125 to be the regular season MVP. Right now on Bet Rivers, Dak Prescott is plus 1,200. If he has a very big game in prime time tomorrow night, could we not see a huge jump in those odds? Would now be a good time to grab him?
So I'm right there with you. I think the numbers on Dak would shorten substantially. Now, it's not just going to be what Dak does on the field that'll change that dynamic and the narrative around his performance. You're also going to need to combine Dallas. I'm not going to say winning out, but at least, losing only one game down the stretch with a very manageable schedule in front of them. And then on the flip side of things, Philadelphia continuing to struggle themselves, because if the Cowboys were able to come from off the pace and win the NFC East, Dak Prescott would be that guy. You need Matthew Stafford to fall off a little bit. And while Drake May has been a hell of a story for New England in his sophomore season, go through that schedule, leaves a lot to be desired. They have 3 wins this year against teams with winning records, and 2 of those teams hail from the NFC South, far from a murderer's row. So I really believe it's Matthew Stafford should be the main consideration, because he's going to have a big stage a couple of times going forward. And I'd feel much more comfortable making a case for Dak Prescott and what lies in front of him than I would be for Drake May, just because he put up crooked numbers on Monday Night Football against the Giants defense that looked like it was playing 7 players, and it'd be better served if they could get Icebox and Rick Moranis out there to call that defense.
The odds have shifted for the Chiefs from them winning the Super Bowl to them making the postseason.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at Kansas City right now, I wouldn't want to tangle in the yes/no market for them to make the playoffs. I'm going to use a big word here because, like you guys said, our goal is to make everyone smarter on Wednesdays. It's called asymmetric risk. And what I mean by saying that is that if you think Kansas City does get into the playoffs, you're going to want to have that price tag of 6.5 or 7-1 on them to win the AFC, because what that'll tell you is that this team has figured it all out and they're going to be a difficult team to beat in the postseason, like we've seen so many years in the past. And when you look at the AFC from top to bottom, which of these teams as they're currently constructed really scares you? I mean, Buffalo, we've seen highs and lows from this team all season. Baltimore can't seem to get on track offensively with Lamar Jackson dealing with more lower body injuries than a 92-year-old man. The Indianapolis Colts have a quarterback playing with a broken leg. The Jacksonville Jaguars still have Trevor Lawrence under center, who's not afraid to throw to teams wearing the wrong color jerseys. The Texans, while I love their defense, I don't know what I'm going to get from C.J. Stroud. So if Kansas City wins on Sunday night and they can get into the playoffs, look, I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes anytime soon, and I think people would be foolish if they felt otherwise for the Chiefs' upside this postseason.
Todd, what will be your snack of choice this Sunday when you settle in to watch the Dolphins and the Jets?
You know what? When I look at the early morning slate, I think that may be a game in my 5 TV setup that doesn't make the rotation. Maybe in the witching hour in the final few minutes to see which quarterback can go out there and execute or which team can screw it up in the case of Tyrod Taylor and Tua Tagovailoa. But you know what? Maybe we should go with a little dolphin-free tuna to try and make sure that we're doing our part to protect the environment on game day. Yeah,
dial up the Matthew McConaughey tuna salad recipe. I've tried it. It's delicious. It hits.
Dan, does that work? Does that work when you're entertaining 6 children under the age of 10 as well? Is that what you do to try and appease them and calm tensions?
Their diet it's like a grazing diet. You just put food out and hope that they grab onto some of it, because the odds are they aren't going to.
Nothing like Mountain Dew and Red Dye 40 to help calm kids down the way I see it.
Exactly.
And 6 iPads.
Yeah, there's a lot of iPads. See you, buddy. See you guys.
Always a pleasure, boys.